The mist clings to my garden like the breath of sleeping dragons, each droplet catching the first pale light of dawn. My name carries the weight of generations, though speaking it aloud would break the sacred silence of this moment. Here in my private sanctuary, surrounded by carefully placed stones and perfectly pruned pine, I prepare my soul for another day bound to the way of the warrior. The cherry blossoms haven't begun their dance yet, but I can feel their promise in the cool morning air. This is where my story begins, not with the clash of steel or the thunder of hooves, but with the quiet discipline that shapes every breath I take. You might think a samurai's day starts with sharpening his blade or checking his armor, but you'd be missing the most important part. The true strength of a warrior comes from within, forged in moments like these when the world is still sleeping and only the spirits of my ancestors keep me company. I kneel on the wooden platform my grandfather built, the same spot where his grandfather once sat, feeling the smooth stones beneath my knees that have been worn by centuries of morning meditation. The weight of my family's honor rests on my shoulders like an invisible cloak, heavier than any armor I'll wear today. The first lesson my sensei taught me wasn't about sword techniques or battlefield tactics. It was about breathing. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. Most people breathe like they're trying to stay alive, which I suppose they are. But a samurai breathes like he's already dead, accepting that each breath might be his last. This acceptance doesn't make you weak. It makes you impossibly strong. When you've made peace with death, life becomes something entirely different. Every morning dewdrop becomes a jewel. Every bird's song becomes a prayer, and every moment becomes sacred. I close my eyes and recite the words that have guided my family for 8 generations. Honor is sharper than any blade, yet more fragile than spring ice. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more than fear. Loyalty burns brighter than any flame, consuming everything false until only truth remains. These aren't just pretty phrases carved into temple walls. They're the laws that govern every choice I make, from the way I hold my chopsticks to the way I'll die when my time comes. The ritual of morning meditation follows patterns older than the oldest temple in Kyoto. First comes the clearing of the mind, sweeping away yesterday's concerns like fallen leaves from a garden path. My breathing slows until it matches the rhythm of the earth itself, deep and steady as mountain roots. The thoughts that usually race through my mind like startled horses gradually settle into stillness. This isn't empty-headed blankness. It's the kind of awareness that lets you hear a needle drop in the next room, or sense an enemy's approach from 3 valleys away. My fingers trace the prayer beads my mother gave me before my first battle, each smooth stone representing a lesson learned through pain and discipline. The wooden beads are dark with age and countless mourning sessions, worn smooth by generations of warriors who sat exactly where I'm sitting now. Some mornings, I can almost feel their presence, the weight of their expectations, and the warmth of their approval. Other mornings, like today, I sense their concern. The political winds are shifting in ways that would make even seasoned diplomats nervous, and we samurai are always the first to feel the storm. Zah, the cherry tree in the corner of my garden stands bare now, its branches reaching toward the sky like the arms of a monk in prayer. In a few weeks, those same branches will explode with blossoms so beautiful they'll make grown men weep. Then, just as suddenly, the petals will fall like snow, carpeting the ground in pink and white. This cycle never fails to remind me of the essential truth every warrior must accept. Beauty and death are not opposites, but dance partners, each making the other more precious. As the first hints of sunrise paint the eastern sky, I begin the most important part of my morning routine. The haiku comes to me like breath, flowing from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. Cherry blossoms wait, patient as drawn swords in spring, for their moment to fall. The words carry more weight than they appear to hold, each syllable a meditation on the nature of duty and sacrifice. A samurai's life is like those cherry blossoms, beautiful precisely because it's temporary, meaningful precisely because it can be lost. The sound of my household beginning to stir reaches me from the main building. My wife moves with the quiet efficiency of someone who's married to duty itself, preparing the morning meal while our children sleep soundly under quilts their grandmother stitched with prayers. They don't know it yet, but every day they spend in this house is a lesson in honor, discipline, and the weight of tradition. The way their mother arranges flowers teaches them about perfection through simplicity. The way I maintain my weapons teaches them about responsibility and respect. My armor waits in the next room, each piece cleaned and inspected last night according to rituals passed down through my bloodline. The lamella plates are bound with silk cords that my wife replaced just last week, their deep blue color chosen to honor the water element that rules my birth year. Each morning, putting on that armor is like putting on the souls of every warrior who wore it before me. The weight becomes familiar after a while, but it never becomes comfortable. Comfort is the enemy of vigilance, and vigilance is what keeps you alive long enough to serve your lord with honor. The katana, resting beside my meditation cushion, has drunk the blood of 17 men. Though I take no pleasure in that count. Each death was necessary, each strike delivered with the precision my training demanded and the regret my humanity requires. My grandfather's sword, forged by a master who spent 3 years folding the steel until it held the strength of mountains and the flexibility of young bamboo. The edge is sharp enough to cut silk scarves in mid-air, yet I've seen it turned aside by nothing more than an opponent's superior technique and cleaner heart. This morning feels different from others, charged with the kind of tension that makes horses restless and dogs howl. The messages that arrived yesterday spoke of movements in the north, clan alliances shifting like sand dunes in a windstorm. My lord expects me to ride out before the morning mist clears, leading a small group of our best fighters to investigate reports of unauthorized troop movements near the border. It's the kind of mission that sounds routine until arrows start flying, and you realize someone's been planning this confrontation for months. The sun climbs higher, turning the mist from grey to gold and signaling the end of my meditation time. Soon, I'll need to transform from contemplative monk to deadly warrior. A change that happens so often it feels like breathing. But first, one final moment of stillness, one last conscious breath before duty calls my name. In this garden, surrounded by stones that have witnessed centuries of dawns, I gather the strength I'll need for whatever this day brings. The cherry blossoms may not be blooming yet, but I can feel their promise in the warming air, beautiful and temporary, as the life I've sworn to live with honor. With honor. The wooden floor creaks beneath my feet as I rise from meditation, each sound a familiar note in the symphony of morning routines that have echoed through this house for generations. My legs protest after an hour of stillness, but the discomfort is welcome. Pain reminds you that you're still alive to feel it. The servants know better than to disturb me during these sacred moments, though I can hear them moving through the corridors like shadows, preparing for another day that might be their master's last. Walking toward my armor room feels like approaching a shrine, which in many ways it is. The lacquered wooden stands hold each piece in perfect position, arranged with the same care a priest shows when setting up for morning prayers. My wife has left fresh chrysanthemums in a small vase beside the armor, their golden faces turned toward the rising sun. She never speaks of her fears, but I read them in these small gestures. Flowers for beauty, incense for prayers, and the way she folds my clothes as if each crease might carry protection. The first piece always goes on the same way my father taught me, and his father taught him. The fundoshi wraps around my waist like a second skin, followed by the white underkimono that will absorb whatever blood this day brings. Some samurai rush through this process, eager to reach the battlefield, but they miss the point entirely. Putting on armor isn't just getting dressed. It's putting on the souls of every warrior who wore these pieces before you died with honor. The leg guards come next, each plate overlapping like fish scales, held together with silk cords my wife braided during long winter evenings. Her fingers wove prayers into every knot, though she'd deny it if asked. Women understand death differently than men. They carry life within their bodies, so they know exactly what's being risked when we ride out with swords at our sides. The weight of the armor settles on my shoulders like an old friend's embrace, familiar and comforting despite its burden. My reflection in the polished bronze mirror shows a man transformed, no longer the peaceful gardener who watched sunrise through cherry branches, but something harder, shaped by duty and sharpened by necessity. The helmet sits on my head like a crown of responsibility, its face mask decorated with the snarling features of a demon meant to terrify enemies. But the real demon isn't carved into metal. It's the one that lives inside every warrior's heart. The voice that whispers about glory and death in equal measure. The katana slides into its place at my side with a whisper of steel against silk, the familiar weight balancing against my hip. My grandfather used to say that a samurai without his sword is like a tree without roots, technically still alive, but missing the thing that makes him what he is. The blade has been polished until it gleams like captured moonlight, its edge sharp enough to split hairs yet strong enough to cleave through armor when necessity demands. Every nick and scratch tells a story, and I can recite them all like prayers. My horse waits in the courtyard, already saddled and eager for movement after a night of rest. Kazi, Wind, earned his name during our first battle together, moving like a storm across the battlefield while I cut down enemies from his back. His coat shines like polished ebony in the morning light, and his eyes hold the same mixture of intelligence and wildness that makes the best war horses. He knows where we're going before I do, reading the tension in my posture and the way my hand rests on my sword hilt. The other samurai assigned to this mission are already assembled, their armor gleaming and their faces set in the expressions men wear when they're trying not to think about death. Tanaka-san adjusts his bow for the third time, a nervous habit that's kept him alive through 7 campaigns. Watanabe-san checks his horse's shoes with the thoroughness of someone who's been stranded behind enemy lines before. These men have fought beside me often enough to read my moods like weather patterns, and they know today feels different. Our orders are simple enough on the surface. Ride north to investigate reports of unauthorized troop movements, determine if they represent a threat to our Lord's territory, and return with intelligence. Simple orders often hide the most complex situations, and the messenger who brought them had the kind of nervous energy that suggests he knew more than he was allowed to say. Border disputes have a way of escalating from minor misunderstandings to full-scale wars, faster than cherry blossoms fall in a spring storm. The road north winds through rice paddies, still brown with winter, past farmhouses where smoke rises from morning cooking fires like incense offerings to the sky. The peasants working in their fields bow deeply as we pass, their faces carefully neutral. They know that samurai on the road means trouble is brewing somewhere, and trouble has a way of rolling downhill onto the people who can't afford armor or fast horses. I've spent enough time among them to understand their mixture of respect and fear. We protect them, but our protection often comes at a price they can't choose to pay or refuse. Casey's hooves beat a steady rhythm against the packed earth, a sound that matches the beating of my heart and the whispered prayers I offer to my ancestors with each breath. The landscape rolls past like a painted scroll, beautiful and serene on the surface, but hiding currents of political tension that would challenge even the wisest diplomats. 3 clans have claims on the territory we're approaching, and none of them are known for their willingness to compromise or their skill at peaceful negotiation. The morning mist begins to lift as we ride deeper into disputed territory, revealing details that weren't visible from a distance. Fresh horse tracks in the mud, too many to belong to merchants or farmers. campfire ashes still warm to the touch when we stop to investigate. Someone's been moving large groups of mounted men through here recently, and they weren't trying very hard to hide their passage. Either they're supremely confident or supremely stupid, and in my experience, both attitudes can get you killed with equal efficiency. My hand finds the hilt of my wakizashi, the shorter blade that serves as my katana's partner in the dance of death. The familiar weight and balance center my thoughts, pushing away the distractions that can mean the difference between returning home for dinner and becoming food for ravens. The political implications of what we're discovering will have to wait. Right now, survival takes precedence over diplomacy. The wind carries scents that tell stories my nose has learned to read over years of campaign seasons. Horse sweat mixed with leather oil, the metallic tang of well-maintained weapons, and underneath it all, something that makes my spine straighten in recognition. Fear has its own smell, sharp and acidic like green persimmons, and it's drifting toward us from whatever lies ahead. Tanaka-san's bow creaks as he tests the string tension, while Watanabe-san's horse sidesteps nervously, picking up on vibrations the rest of us haven't felt yet. The forest ahead looks innocent enough, pine trees standing like silent monks in their winter robes, but appearances lie more often than honest men tell truth. My grandfather used to say that battlefields choose themselves, and this stretch of woodland has all the characteristics that make tacticians wake up in cold sweats. Natural choke points where cavalry becomes useless, thick undergrowth perfect for hiding archers, and enough elevation changes to turn a simple patrol into a deadly game of blind man's bluff. We slow our horses to a walk, each hoof fall now deliberate and measured. Sound travels differently when you're expecting trouble. Every snapping twig becomes a signal. Every bird call gets examined for human mimicry, and the absence of normal forest noise speaks louder than war drums. The tracks we've been following split here, some heading deeper into the woods while others circle back toward the main road. Classic pincer movement preparation, the kind of tactical setup that looks brilliant in theory and gets people killed in practice. My katana whispers against its scabbard as I adjust my position, the steel singing a note only warriors understand. The blade knows what's coming before my mind fully processes the information, responding to subtle changes in my body tension and breathing pattern. 20 years of training have created connections between weapon and wielder that bypass conscious thought entirely. When death comes calling, philosophy becomes luxury and instinct becomes survival. The first arrow misses Watanabe-san's head by the width of a hair, burying itself in the pine tree behind him with a sound like splitting wood. Time doesn't slow down the way poets claim. It fractures into crystalline moments where every detail burns itself into memory with perfect clarity. The archer's position revealed by the arrow's angle, approximately 30 yards northeast and elevated. The second bowman hidden in the opposite tree line, his draw already half completed. The way my horse's muscles bunch beneath me as he prepares to move before my heels touch his flanks. Training takes over like muscle memory written in blood and repetition. My sword clears its scabbard in one fluid motion, the draw so practiced it happens without conscious direction. The blade catches morning sunlight and throws it back like captured lightning, while my legs guide Kaiser through a series of movements we've rehearsed until they became instinct. Arrows whistle past close enough to trim my hair, but missing is the same as not shooting when you're dealing with mounted samurai who've survived this dance before. The attackers reveal themselves gradually, emerging from cover like deadly flowers blooming in reverse. 8 men, maybe 9, dressed in the kind of mismatched armor that suggests ronin rather than clan warriors. Masterless samurai fight with the desperation of men who've lost everything except their swords and their willingness to use them. They're dangerous precisely because they have nothing left to lose, no lord to serve, and no honor to preserve except what they can carve out with steel. My first opponent rushes forward with the kind of wild enthusiasm that gets beginners killed quickly. His technique is sound enough, a standard overhead strike aimed at splitting my skull like a melon. But he telegraphs his intentions with all the subtlety of a festival drummer. I guide his blade aside with minimal effort, letting his momentum carry him past, while my return strike opens his throat from ear to ear. He dies with surprise written across his face, probably wondering why his perfect attack failed so completely. The second Ronin proves more challenging, his movements carrying the careful precision of someone who's survived long enough to learn from his mistakes. We exchange a series of cuts and parries that ring through the forest like temple bells, each strike testing the other's defense, while searching for the tiny opening that will end the fight. His blade work shows influences from the Nitan school, all flowing circles and deceptive angles that make judging distance nearly impossible. Blood spatters the fallen leaves as our dance continues, some his and some mine, though the cuts I've taken are shallow enough to ignore for now. Pain is just information, and right now that information tells me I'm still alive enough to keep fighting. The Ronin's breathing grows laboured, while mine stays controlled, the difference between desperation and discipline becoming more apparent with each exchange. His final attack comes with everything he has left, a magnificent strike that would have been legendary if it had connected. Instead, it meets empty air as I step inside his guard, my blade finding the gap between his chest plates with the precision of a surgeon's knife. He looks down at the steel protruding from his ribs with something like academic interest, as if wondering how such a small thing could end such a large life. When he falls, it's with the dignity of a man who fought well and died better, earning the kind of death most warriors only dream about. The forest grows quiet again, except for the sound of heavy breathing and the soft nickering of nervous horses. Watanabe-san sports a cut across his forehead that's bleeding impressively but probably won't kill him, while Tanaka-san's arrow has found its mark in an enemy's shoulder. The surviving attackers melt back into the trees like morning mist, wise enough to know when a fight has turned against them. We count our dead and theirs with the methodical efficiency of men who've done this accounting too many times before. 3 enemies down, 5 escaped, and all of us still breathing, though somewhat worse for wear. The bodies tell their own story when examined closely. Well-maintained weapons, decent armor, and the kind of scars that come from years of professional fighting. These weren't bandits or desperate peasants. They were trained warriors, working for someone with enough coin to hire quality muscle. The implications settle over me like a heavy cloak while I clean blood from my blade. Someone wanted us dead, or captured badly enough to risk 8 good fighters on what should have been a simple ambush. That level of commitment suggests intelligence about our mission that goes well beyond lucky guessing. Either we have a spy in our Lord's household, or this entire expedition was expected from the moment we left the castle gates. My horse stamps impatiently, eager to continue moving after the excitement of battle. Kays has seen enough fights to know that staying in one place after contact with the enemy is usually a fatal mistake. The dead Ronin's horses stand nearby, their reins tangled in the underbrush, and their eyes showing the kind of confused sadness that animals display when their humans suddenly stop moving. War orphans everyone, and probably destined for the stew pot if nobody claims them soon. The blood on my armor is already beginning to darken as it dries, turning from bright red to the rusty brown that experienced warriors know so well. Each stain tells a story, and my equipment carries enough stories to fill several scrolls. Some days, I wonder if the armor remembers its former owners, if the metal holds echoes of all the battles it has witnessed and all the men who have died while wearing it. The sun climbs higher as we resume our patrol, casting long shadows that turn the forest floor into a pattern of light and darkness. Somewhere ahead lies whatever force sent those Ronin to test our strength, and the morning's encounter suggests we'll find them sooner rather than later. My hand rests on my sword hilt with practiced casualness, ready to draw at the first sign of trouble, while my eyes scan the tree line for movement that doesn't belong. The cherry blossoms in my garden seem very far away now, though the memory of their promise keeps me centered. as we ride deeper into uncertain territory. Beauty and death, always dancing together, always reminding warriors that today might be the day when duty demands the ultimate sacrifice. The thought doesn't frighten me anymore. It simply exists, like the weight of my armor or the rhythm of my horse's breathing beneath me. The tracks we've been following lead us deeper into territory that belongs to no single clan, where the trees grow thick enough to hide armies and the silence carries more menace than 1,000 war cries. My grandfather always said that neutral ground was where the most dangerous battles happened, because nobody cared enough to maintain order when the killing started. The morning's encounter with the Ronin feels like a warning shot, the kind of polite violence that says much worse things are waiting just around the next bend in the path. Watanabe-san's forehead has stopped bleeding, though the cut will leave him with another scar to add to his collection. He wears them like a living history of every campaign he survived, each mark a lesson written in flesh and pain. Some warriors try to avoid scars, thinking they make them less attractive to women or less dignified in court. Watanabe-san knows better. Scars are proof that you've been tested and found worthy of survival, badges of honor that can't be bought or inherited. The forest begins to thin as we climb toward higher ground, revealing glimpses of what lies ahead through gaps in the pine canopy. Smoke rises in thin columns from what looks like a temporary encampment, too organized to be bandits, but too small to be a proper army. My stomach tightens with the familiar sensation that comes just before important decisions have to be made with incomplete information. The smart move would be to turn back and report what we've discovered, but intelligence gathered from a safe distance rarely tells the whole story. Casey's ears twitch forward as he catches sounds my human hearing hasn't detected yet. His battle training makes him more reliable than any scout when it comes to sensing danger, and right now, every line of his body suggests we're approaching something that requires careful attention. The other horses show similar signs of alertness, their nostrils flaring as they test the wind for scents that don't belong in peaceful forests. We dismount and secure our horses to trees far enough back that they won't be caught in whatever happens next. Leading them forward would announce our presence like beating festival drums, and the element of surprise might be the only advantage we have left. My feet find the forest floor with practiced silence, each step placed with the kind of care that comes from years of moving through hostile territory, where a snapped twig could mean the difference between mission success and becoming food for crows. The encampment reveals itself gradually as we creep closer, details emerging from the green shadows like pieces of a puzzle assembling themselves. 30 men, maybe more, armed and organized in ways that suggest professional military training rather than desperate outlaws. Their banners carry no clan markings I recognize, which makes them either very clever or very dangerous, possibly both. The camp's layout shows tactical thinking, with clear fields of fire and multiple escape routes planned into the positioning of every tent and supply wagon. My heart beats steadier as the situation becomes clearer. Unknown is always worse than dangerous, because you can plan for danger, but uncertainty kills through hesitation and second guessing. These men are here for a purpose that involves our territory, our lord, and probably us specifically. The morning's ambush wasn't random violence, but a calculated probe designed to test our strength and gather intelligence about our capabilities. The leader's tent sits in the center of the camp like a spider in its web, larger than the others and positioned to command views in all directions. Whoever runs this operation understands the importance of maintaining situational awareness. Another sign that we're dealing with professionals rather than opportunistic bandits. A man emerges from the tent as we watch, his armor bearing subtle decorations that suggest noble birth or at least noble aspirations. Tanaka-san touches my shoulder and points toward the eastern edge of the camp, where guards patrol with the kind of lazy efficiency that comes from doing the same job for too many days without incident. Their boredom might be our opportunity, but it could just as easily be a trap designed to look like carelessness. Experienced commanders sometimes use false security to lure enemies into making fatal mistakes, And this whole situation feels like the kind of elaborate setup that gets written about in military histories. The wind shifts direction, carrying voices from the camp that are too distant to understand, but close enough to reveal the casual confidence of men who don't expect immediate trouble. They're speaking the dialect common to the northern provinces, which narrows down their possible origins, but doesn't tell us who's paying their wages. Mercenary companies travel wherever the gold flows thickest, and loyalty goes to whoever signs the most recent contract, rather than to any particular clan or cause. My options feel limited in ways that make my sword hand itch with anticipation. We could withdraw and report what we've seen, but that gives the enemy time to complete whatever operation brought them here. We could attempt to capture one of their sentries for interrogation, but that risks alerting the entire camp to our presence. Or we could try to get close enough to the command tent to overhear whatever plans are being discussed, accepting the likelihood that discovery would mean fighting our way out against overwhelming odds. The decision crystallizes with the sudden clarity that comes when training takes precedence over thinking. A samurai serves his lord best by providing accurate intelligence. And accurate intelligence requires risks that comfortable men won't take. I signal to my companions, using the hand gestures we've practiced until they became a language more reliable than speech. Tanaka-san will position himself with a clear shot at the command tent, while Watanabe-san circles around to create a distraction if we need one. Moving through enemy territory feels like swimming underwater, every sense heightened by the knowledge that discovery means immediate violence. The guards continue their predictable patrol patterns, following routes that leave gaps just wide enough for determined infiltrators to exploit. My feet find purchase on ground that won't shift or crackle, while my breathing matches the rhythm of wind through pine branches until I become part of the forest's natural symphony. The command tent grows larger as I approach, its silk walls decorated with patterns that speak of wealth and artistic pretension. Voices become clearer, revealing a conversation that makes my blood run cold with its casual discussion of death and destruction. They're planning something that goes far beyond border raids or territorial disputes, something that would reshape the political landscape of our entire region if allowed to succeed. As the sun sets behind the mountains and I return to my garden, the weight of this day settles into my bones like winter frost. The cherry blossoms have finally begun their eternal dance, petals drifting down like the souls of fallen warriors finding their rest. Each petal reminds me that beauty exists precisely because it cannot last forever, just as honor means something only because it can be lost in a single moment of weakness. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new tests of the code that shapes every breath I take. But tonight, in this sacred space where my ancestors whisper their approval through rustling leaves, I understand the truth that every samurai must eventually face. We are not fighting for victory or glory or even survival. We are fighting to become worthy of the deaths we will someday die. The way of the warrior is the way of the falling cherry blossom, beautiful in its brief moment of existence, meaningful in its willingness to let go when the time comes.